I've been spending way too much money on books lately, so this week I'm gonna be only buying books that I can find from thrift stores. Even if that means I can only find like half torn up books from the 80s, I don't know, I'm gonna read them. Also, you probably know at this point that when I do these challenges, I love to experience as many books as possible within the week. So in order to help me stay on a good pace with reading, I'm breaking out the wheel again. This tells me how much I need to read per day, anywhere from only 15 pages all the way up to 200, which would be really hard because I have a very busy week ahead. So let's start reading. So I feel like I got super lucky with this first shopping trip. There weren't a ton of options, but randomly there was one copy of a really nice book and I'm so happy I found it. It is Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. I have not read a Sally Rooney book yet, but I've heard so many good things about her. She has some really popular books, and so I feel like finding this was like so lucky. It did have an ominous brown stain towards the top, but I cleaned it off and I think it's fine. I'm hoping this is really going to be a good one, but before I start reading, I need to spin my wheel. So this wheel is a little bit different from all the other wheels I've done before. I of course have the easy 15 pages and the really difficult 200 pages, but then everything in between I didn't really do page numbers. Instead, I did like different prompts that I had to read to, if that makes sense. So one of them, for example, is like read until somebody makes you laugh in the story, or one of them is like read until there's a plot twist. I just kind of wanted to do something different with it this time, and I thought this would be really fun. So that's what this one is. So I'm going to spin for today. I feel like the videos I do with these always start off with like the easiest things in the beginning. I promise I'm not intentionally doing that, but we started off with only 15 pages, which is really nice. I like starting off easy. So I've already hit 20 pages. I'm on chapter 2, already hit my reading goal for the day, but I think I am going to keep reading more throughout today. So far, my first impression is that I really like Sally Rooney's writing style. I just really love unique writing styles, things that feel different from everything else you read. She does not put quotations around her dialogue, which is a little bit weird, but in a way I kind of like it. The sentences are pretty short and it feels just very quickly paced, but also things are really well described, so I'm liking it a lot so far. So far, this story is about two brothers who just recently lost their father, and it's so far just them kind of trying to navigate life post their father's funeral. One of them is a chess prodigy, and I just read over a chess match that he had, and that was really fun to read. I will say that although I do like Sally Rooney's writing style, the story so far isn't intriguing me that much. Not much is going on. Yesterday I made it to chapter 3, which is a little over 50 pages in, so I'm hoping things might pick up a little bit more from here, but I'm not sure. But before I start reading today, I'm gonna spin the wheel again. Okay, this was an interesting little prompt I put in here. I put to read until something makes you laugh. Now, although this book is a little bit kind of like down so far because just the story is a little bit sad thus far, I will say that Sally Rooney has some really funny one-liners. So I don't know how far I'm gonna have to get in order to find something that does make me laugh in this book, but today I'm gonna read until I can find that. I've been reading for about an hour more, or a little bit over an hour. I have not found anything funny yet, but I'm pretty sure something will come eventually because I do remember, I don't know what specifically, but I do remember with the first 50 pages coming across a couple sentences that I thought were funny. I was wondering, what should I do if I finish the day of reading and nothing has come up that makes me laugh? Does that mean I just have to like finish the book? But again, I'm pretty confident that I'll find something funny in here soon, so I'm not too worried about it. As far as the story goes, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not loving it that much, which is kind of sad. Not much is going on, which I kind of get is like the appeal to the story. It's more of like a character study than a big plot type of book, but at the same time, I'm not really excited about it. I've read a few more chapters and I'm sad to admit that it's not going well. Not just the fact that I haven't found anything funny yet, but also I'm just not loving the story very much. Like I said, the story's pretty bland, but it's also very much not a PG book, if you know what I mean, which is sad. I might read a few more chapters and hope I can find something funny, but I'm gonna be honest, I'm not positive if I'm gonna be finishing this book. We'll see. So it's the next day and I have bad news. About halfway through the day yesterday, I decided to DNF this book. I didn't even make it that far in. I also didn't find anything funny. So yesterday was a bit of a fail, which is kind of a sad way to start off the video. But I also have really good news, which is that I just got back from another thrift store and I found 2 amazing books that I am so excited to read. The second thrift store I went to was so much bigger and it had a much larger book section. I had a lot of fun just browsing everything at this place. I found so many modern books here and all of them were under $3. So the first book I got was kind of hidden in the back of the store, but once I found it, I was so excited because this is a very popular book that I have been wanting to read for a long time, which is The Midnight Library. So I bought this one and I couldn't wait to start it. And like I said, I have a little bit of a busy week ahead of me because I'm going on vacation, which means I'm gonna get some really good relaxing beach reading in, which I'm so excited for. So I'm getting my little book sack and I'm putting both of these books inside, and I can't wait to read them on my trip. I'm also gonna be bringing my little wheel and I'm gonna continue all of this on vacation. So things are looking up. So the first day of my vacation, I spun the wheel and it landed on that I needed to read 10 pages and then spin again. So I started this book with the pretty view of the ocean as my backdrop and read those first 10 pages pretty quickly. Then I spun again and got that I needed to read until the main character did something that I hated, which honestly was a prompt I was a little bit worried about. So basically so far this book is about a girl who is not happy with her life, and so she kind of like dreams up this imaginary library where every single book is a different variation of her life. So for the most part the book so far has been her picking different books off the shelf and reading through them, and then it kind of like transports her into a different variation of her life and she gets to live out that version for a little bit and see if she likes it or not. But as you saw, my task is to read until the main character does something that I hate, and that probably couldn't be a harder prompt for this book because I'm really liking this main character so far. However, she does sometimes make some bad decisions, so I think there's a possibility for me to find it. I've been reading off and on basically the entire day. The main character still hasn't done anything that I hate and I'm worried she might never, but I still have tonight to read, so I'm hoping that I'll find something. So then I took a break for a few hours and then later that night I went back to reading. I sat down on this little couch and I was determined to find something the main character did that I didn't like before the end of the night. Luckily, after a little while, I started to notice this repetition in the main character's behavior that was getting a little bit annoying as time went on. Basically, about halfway through the book, you start to realize that none of the life options the main character is experiencing are good enough to make her actually happy. So at this point, it became really obvious that her best option was just to go back to her normal original life and work on making things better there rather than continuing to try new options. And yet she kept going back to this library and pulling out new books and trying out new lives over and over and over again. And I think it was just annoying because I felt like I already knew how the book needed to end and it was really obvious, and I feel like it should have been obvious to the main character too, and yet it just wasn't clicking for her yet. So anyway, because I noticed this that night, I was finally able to stop reading before it got too late. The next day I spun the wheel and it again said that I need to read until something makes me laugh. I was able to read on the beach on this day, which was so nice, and a couple different places outside. I wasn't really finding anything funny, but it was okay because I was getting really close to finishing the book. And then after all my beach time, by the end of that afternoon, I was able to finish it. So I forgot to film my final thoughts about this book on the trip, so I thought I'd just cut in and do it really quick now. I thought the writing style was really, really good, and I just really love stories that are unique. Like when things are happening that I can just tell I've never read before, I really love that. Although at some point about like halfway through, I did kind of feel like I knew exactly how the book was gonna end, but it did get a little bit annoying because it seemed so obvious to me, and the fact that the main character wasn't seeing it was a little bit annoying. So towards the end, some things did feel like it was dragging a little bit just because, again, I felt like I knew exactly where we needed to be and we just weren't getting there quickly. But in the grand scheme of things, that felt like such a small part of the book, and overall, I did very much enjoy this whole story. So the second book I brought on vacation that I bought from a thrift store was one that I hadn't actually heard anything about before. Browsing through the thrift store, I found a lot of great options of books, but this one definitely stood out to me as being one that I thought I would love the most. There happened to be, and I didn't know this existed, but there just happened to be a Christian fiction section in this thrift store, which I just thought was such a funny coincidence because I had been reading so much Christian fiction lately. There were so many to choose from, it was actually really hard to decide, but I ended up going with this one called Providence by Clara Laureano. From what I could tell on the back synopsis, this book was a romance that had a little bit of mystery mixed in. It's about a girl who owns this interior design business, and she realizes out of nowhere that she inherited these really beautiful homes in a small town in Colorado. And there's this whole mystery on why she inherited them. She didn't know much about her family history because she was adopted. And there was a romance mixed into all of that. So I thought it sounded interesting, so I bought it and brought it on my trip. So I spun the wheel again when starting Provenance, and I got that I needed to read 5 chapters, which I was really happy with because I didn't start this book till towards the end of the day, and I was able to read all 5 pretty quickly. The next day I got up and spun again, and this time I got a very interesting prompt. So I started this new book, Provenance, yesterday. I spun the wheel and it gave me 5 chapters. So I pretty easily read all of my 5 chapters yesterday. And then today I just spun and it said I need to read until I find some kind of a betrayal. This one might be a little bit more difficult because a betrayal doesn't typically happen until like closer to the end of a book. And I only just started this one. I'm only 5 chapters in. So I'm a little worried as to how long it'll take until I get to that point. I found so many different nice reading places here with like some really pretty views. So I am excited to read a lot today. And we'll see how long it takes me to get there. At first I was really worried that I wouldn't find any kind of betrayal until the end of the book, but luckily a little over 100 pages in I found exactly what I was looking for. Basically the main 2 characters had an argument and one of them literally said that they felt like they had been betrayed, so it was perfect. So at this point in reading the book I was really loving the mystery of the story. I was super interested in the main character's past, with specifically her parents and her grandparents and what exactly made her an orphan, and I loved how she was slowly piecing together the story of her past throughout this book. The writing of this story wasn't exactly my favorite, and although I didn't mind the romance, I wasn't like in love with it. This book was kind of hard for me to judge at first because part of it I really loved and then another part I wasn't that crazy about, but it was still definitely good enough for me to finish, so I kept reading. Then that marked the end of my trip. Obviously I filmed so little of it, but I had such a good time with my family, just having fun, and then the last day was spent just driving home. On this day I spun again and it only said that I needed to read 15 pages, but all I had to do was read in the car, so I ended up flying past that goal and I ended up finishing the entire book in the car. So I finished Provenance on my way home from my trip, and there was a lot I really liked about this book. I thought the mystery was pretty unique and it was really fun to slowly uncover. There was also a lot of talk about the main character's beliefs in God and her slowly growing in that throughout the book, which I also liked. I will say that towards the end and especially the last couple of scenes felt very much like a Hallmark movie, but other than that I did enjoy this book. And overall I'm just so happy that I found some really good like modern high quality books from these thrift stores. I was really surprised with some of these finds and I was so happy with how cheap they were. So even though one of them was a DNF, I feel like I still accomplished my goal of not spending too much money on books this week, and I'm so excited to keep shopping at thrift stores for books in the future. So I would call this week of reading a success.